ABC 10 News at 4 starts now.
We are in just a moment going to be getting pictures live out of Manhattan, where New York City leaders are encouraging peaceful protests after demonstrations turned violent around the country. Outrage over a lack of charges connected to Breonna Taylor's death, but the FBI says federal charges are possible. Heart-pounding moments at Fisherman's Landing. Crew members found unconscious on a charter boat just hours after delivering passengers to shore. Plus, why unemployed workers still searching for a job are being told to pivot to get hired. Cities are bracing for another night of potential protests over the decision not to charge any officers with the direct death of Breonna Taylor. But the FBI says its investigation is not over. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kimberly Hunt. This is what it looks like right now in New York City. If we have those pictures, they're coming up and down on the satellite after the Kentucky grand jury announced 2 officers were justified in their use of force because of Taylor's boyfriend opening fire first and hitting an officer. And 1 officer is charged with 3 counts of wanton endangerment for firing into a neighbor's apartment after that gunfire erupted. 2 Louisville police officers shot during the protests overnight are recovering. 1 was treated for a gunshot wound to the hip and released from the hospital. The second underwent surgery after being shot in the abdomen and is expected to be okay. The alleged shooter is in custody. There is a 9 o'clock curfew now in Louisville tonight. These are the live pictures that we've been getting. This is New York City right now. Some of the protests that have been happening throughout the country, and they are basically saying that they wish that there had been murder charges instead of wanton endangerment charges. Only 1 officer affected by the count 3 felony charge, which does hold 15 years in prison if that officer is convicted of wanton endangerment for firing his gun, which ended up being through the walls into a neighbor's apartment. The other 2 officers aren't charged at all in the case of Breonna Taylor, and we are following local cases as well. We'll keep you posted. 2 Louisville police officers that were shot during those protests overnight, as we said, recovering now. Kentucky officers shot. We're getting these pictures coming in right now. 1 treated for the gunshot wound to the hip, released from the hospital. The second underwent surgery after being shot in the abdomen, expected to be okay. The alleged shooter is in custody. There is a 9 o'clock curfew now, as we've said, in Louisville.
Outrage in many parts of America over the announcement that the officers involved in Breonna Taylor's death will not face criminal charges. Federal charges are still possible. The FBI investigation could result in civil rights violations. The Louisville Metro Police Department is also still trying to determine if the officers violated police rules during that raid. Attorneys for Taylor's family say that those demanding change need to use their voice where it matters most, the ballot box.
Continue to protest, but we got to turn that protest into power and change the laws.
Former Louisville police officer Brett Hankison was indicted yesterday for endangering Taylor's neighbors when he fired into the apartment complex. And there's a new investigation into the promise of police reforms as part of the settlement with Taylor's family. Louisville police say that it will implement an early warning system. It'll track certain officer behaviors and alert the department when a pattern emerges. Our partners at Newsy and the Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting found that this isn't the first time this police department has made that promise.
That is something that the police department promoted years ago and said that they had implemented. I just wonder what types of things could have been avoided.
Since 2015, Louisville police has reported at least 5 times that they were utilizing or are in the process of implementing early warning system software. It's never been activated. In an email, a police spokesperson said one reason was the local police union was worried the proposed system could, quote, create a paper trail of perceived potential issues and could be problematic for the department. Now, the use of an early warning system was previously questioned during another case. Louisville police officers shot Darnell Wicker 14 times and killed him in 2016. One of those officers was involved in at least 10 use of force incidents before that.
And it sort of clicked that one of the reasons my client was killed was because the man who shot him had never been properly flagged by this very simple tool.
3 months after Wicker's family settled with Louisville police, Breonna Taylor was killed. Former officer indicted yesterday had 31 use of force incidents in a 9-year period. An early warning system would have triggered at least 4 alerts for use of force alone.
Stay with us as this story develops. You can have breaking news alerts sent straight to your smartphone with the ABC 10 News mobile app. Now to frightening moments at Fisherman's Landing. 4 crew members were found unresponsive aboard a fishing boat this morning. Police say they may have overdosed on fentanyl. And as ABC 10 News reporter Jennifer De La Cruz explains, they were just an hour away from taking passengers out to sea.
Narcotics agents are investigating after 4 crew members were found unconscious from a drug overdose on the Shogun charter fishing boat. The boat was docked at the time, but police say if it was out at sea, the situation would have been much worse. Narcotics and hazmat crews sweeping the Shogun fishing boat for traces of fentanyl Thursday morning. Harbor police finding 4 crew members unconscious from a drug overdose while the ship was docked at Fisherman's Landing. First responders administered Narcan to the victims, which helps counteract opioids, but they're still investigating exactly what drugs were taken.
So if there is any fentanyl on board the vessel, the entire vessel will have to be swept, cleaned by the hazardous materials team to make sure that there's none on board, because it's very lethal in very small quantities.
According to the company's website, the Shogun has been operating sport fishing charters since 1989. Their schedule shows they had just returned from a 2-day charter with 30 people on board at 6 a.m. The anonymous 911 call came in around 9 o'clock. The boat was set to depart with a new group of 28 passengers just 1 hour later. Harbor police say other crew members were on board at the time, but no paying passengers. The Shogun website also profiles the ship's captains. It is unclear whether or not they are part of the group that overdosed. People passing by Thursday morning stressing safety should always be #1 priority on the water.
But as the captain of the vessel, it's your ultimate responsibility to maintain safety for the people on board.
People should know that when they're getting on any kind of public transportation, that they've entrusted their well-being to a competent person.
We reached out to the Shogun Charter Company, but they declined to comment. Jennifer De La Cruz, ABC 10 News.
Harbor police say the men taken to the hospital are conscious. No charges have been filed at this time.
The president and first lady paid their respects to the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg today. The president saying he will announce his nominee to replace Ginsburg on Saturday. Let's turn to the newsfeed. Republicans are going against what the president said yesterday about a peaceful transition of power. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell tweeting that there will be an orderly transition of power. Yesterday, the president saying that we'll just have to wait and see what happens. 2 companies developing COVID-19 vaccines say that they are trying to give the public as much information as possible about their testing methods. Executives at AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson say the quick timeline demands transparency so the public knows it will be safe. And AstraZeneca is still waiting on approval to restart its U.S. vaccine trial again. Now, it did pause the trials after a patient appeared to have some side effects. Companies restarted in other countries after an investigation, but is still waiting on FDA approval.